All right, welcome back. 506, Jennifer Crane is standing by. And, of course, our feature, as always, is brought to you by the folks at Guaranteed Industries. A reminder, the warmest summer on record is being predicted, so call your air conditioning specialist at Guaranteed and Can Air, 514-342-3400, serving Montrealers since 1957. Jennifer, not sure where you want to start, but I see that on your list today, and I kind of alluded to this a couple of times, sort of unsure as to what's going on here exactly. So this idea that the CAQ loses an appeal decision, a court decision, right, on that 33% increase for out-of-province students and the francization that they'd have to do as well. And their reaction is, we're not going to appeal, despite the fact they lost the ruling, but we're also not going to change our mind that we're to continue doing this. What is this about? Do you know?
I have my suspicions, and it's all to do with the PQ. So when this policy was introduced, which I was a couple of years ago I think it was in the fall of 2023, it was based on non-scientific evidence. So Jean-François Robert, who wouldn't know evidence-based policy if it hit him upside the head, determined there's too much English being spoken on the streets of Montreal. Therefore, the tuition should go up on out-of-province students, and then also equalizing the relative wealth of the various francophone networks and the English universities. It was a whole bunch of convoluted nonsense. But they were being egged on by the PQ, right? And in particular, Pascal Bérubé and Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, who went to McGill. Who knew? But, they're not talking to anybody except for the voters that they're trying to get away from the PQ in next year's election. So if they're seen as doing anything to, re-anglicize Montreal, they're going to open themselves up to attacks from the CAQ and other nationalists. So they're not going to bother doing anything. I mean, they lose. They've never been coherent or credible on any of these post-secondary files. So this is just more of the same.
Does that mean that this is just, the talking through their hat, where Pascal Derry says, there's nothing here that needs to be changed, everything is okay, and just let this go? Because the universities have both reacted, obviously, and they're concerned.
Well, they should be concerned because they're not going to do anything. Because if they're not going to appeal, but they're not going to, it seems, heed the sort of letter of what the judge said, that the things are unreasonable. Since he didn't say it was illegal and he didn't, overturn them, then they're okay, and we're going to keep them. Right. Because for the moment, Aaron, they're a political tool in the CAQ's quiver, and they're not aimed at those hapless students, those rock students whose dreams of coming and studying in our wonderful city have been dashed. Those words are aimed at, francophone, probably unilingual voters in the regions that they want to woo away from, voting PQ or woo back to them, because they picked up a lot of those, the CAQ has picked up a lot of those votes since 2018, and they want to be able to maintain them. So being seen as re-anglicizing Montreal or opening the door or being weak on any of these types of ethno-nationalist issues, it's just a non-starter.
So then the other story, the big story, I guess we've been talking about on and off through the afternoon, Michael Sabia, surprise announcement today. He's leaving Hydro-Quebec as the head of it and heading over to join Mark Carney in the federal government. Pretty good acquisition for the government, I would guess.
Yes, well, and it kind of reminds me, I know that you like music as much as I do, it reminds me of a supergroup. A supergroup that, they form from all kinds of awesome bands, and they pick from here and there, and it turns into this one awesome band. So Mark Carney's been able to get some really good people, including Michael Sabia. And I mean, his various career achievements have been gone over at length this afternoon on CJAD, so I needn't repeat them here. But it's great news. I mean, it's going to be, this is a really serious looking government. I know that certain critics will say that Mark Carney shouldn't be referring to it as a new government, but there is really a sense of a wind of change in the air. And, since the last time we spoke, and I do hope you had a nice vacation, Carlos Letao is now a parliamentary secretary. So that economic supergroup, rock star image around the whole economic file is just strengthened by today's edition.
Yeah, and it's funny, the idea of the supergroup. So you have on the economic file anyway, now you have Michael Sabia, you already mentioned Carlos Letao, and this idea, and I know Mark Carney, and I pointed this out a couple of times, he makes a point of saying the previous government, trying to draw a distinction between Justin Trudeau and himself. So yeah, there's a lot of the same people, but there's a new guy running the boat, right? Or the ship, whatever. And it seems to me he's the guy who'll make all the calls. So I think that's obviously by design.
Well, I do. I think you're absolutely right. And he has been making all the calls. I mean, even if he didn't have to say it, any observer even a casual one would see a clear differentiation between what's going on now and what was going on back in, early January and December.
Listen, maybe there's more coming. Who knows? But so far, I think you have to be impressed, whether you're a big fan or not. At least he's taking the right steps. And did we find out anything today, by the way, between? I know Melanie Joly was addressing somebody in town at a meeting today, a group. Anything come of the U.S.-Canada trade talks today? In case I missed it, have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything. I mean, I was listening to on the news just as we were going on, and there's no confirmation, but there are rumors that they've exchanged some frameworks. You know what, just going back to Carney, it's going to be interesting, the G7 meeting that's going to happen. I don't know if I heard it here, but it was somebody made the point, so it's not my original point, but it's true, that it's going to resemble more of a G20 meeting than a G7 meeting because of all of these other players that are going to come. And what's going to be interesting is it will be all of the discussions on the margins and on the sidelines of the G7 meetings. So I think that, obviously we're in a bit of global economic chaos caused by he who shall not be mentioned. And, so there will be a lot of interesting players in Kananaskis when they convene, including from China and India.
Yeah, and that list keeps getting longer and longer, apparently. We found out today Keir Starmer's actually showing up a few days early before this even gets underway, right?
Excuse me, yes, he is.
So, I mean, I know it's funny, though. I forgot who it was yesterday. It might have been Rudy Husney. I said, based on this and the fact that so many global leaders will be showing up at this thing, do you expect much will come of it? And he said, probably not. So, I mean, they're exploratory talks. I understand that. But in terms of actual, announcement that could be made at the end of this, you think we get a lot?
Well, I'm not sure if there'll be a lot to come out of it, but I think that it's what the Prime Minister is doing is he's positioning Canada. So he's showing Donald Trump and the Americans that they're not the only game in town, that we have other friends or other places that we can invest, that we can, other countries that we can work with. And, it's setting, I think it's part of a longer term vision that he has for Canada and perhaps diversifying, our spending. And, we've seen obviously a large, announcements in defense spending, so going up to 2%, and that may even be forced up to 5%, depending. But this is great news for the defense industry. I'm sure people are very happy.
Yeah, and again, I asked this as a question today, and I think most people agree it's been a long time coming. So I think most people agree this is going to be. First of all, it's a great idea, and second of all, we hope the money will be well spent. I would ask one last thing here with respect, and I know that's a note on the sheet today. We're only about a week away from the Quebec Liberal Party, of course, appointing a new leader provincially here. Is there still an anyone but Pablo movement going on from what you know?
Well, there is, and there was an article that was published in the Hill Times today, and it was, behind the firewall. And I heard you speaking to my friend Andrew Cadell earlier, and it was actually penned by Andrew today, and it was about Pablo. And I'm just going to read you part of one of the phrases that he said. So just bear with me for 1 second here. The former Trudeau cabinet minister was known on Parliament Hill as a hyper-nationalist who publicly denied that there was such a thing as a native Anglophone community in Quebec. As someone whose ancestors arrived directly in Quebec City and lived there for generations, I was gobsmacked when I heard this. So that's what Andrew had to say. I felt the same way. My ancestors also arrived in Quebec City and also in the Eastern Townships. I'm an 8th-generation person, and when I heard this, that Pablo was saying this, and he was established in Sherbrooke, I went, what? You didn't know? You thought that those people in Sherbrooke, the Anglos, they came from Ontario? I mean, what is this? So it really surprised me that a lot of these Montreal area MNAs have coalesced behind him, that they think that he can get a majority. A lot of people who have worked in federal politics before with Pablo seriously doubt his ability to organize a lot of things. He's able to organize a nice little popularity contest leadership race, but there's definitely a movement of not anybody but Pablo. I've received a number of messages today, so we'll see what happens. They're going to have their shindig in Quebec City on Saturday, and we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, it's a ranked ballot. I know some people aren't going to bother with the ranking; they're just going to vote for their choice of candidate. But there's the thing with the rules is that the youth have a considerable weight on the ballot. The regions have considerable weight on the ballot, and some of the other candidates, like Charles Milliard, for example, or Carl Blackburn, they have a really, really good, both of them, command of the regions and knowing the regional considerations. And I don't necessarily think that that Pablo has that.
I agree with you. We had a chance to speak to Carl Blackburn earlier, and it's interesting because, and I was quite impressed by what he had to say, but then I realized he doesn't have the same name or face recognition in Montreal, obviously, as someone like a Pablo Rodriguez. But then you tell yourself, you're not voting for, it's not citizens voting, it's members of this particular party voting. It would seem to me, I think either one, Carl Blackburn or Charles Mignard, has a pretty good chance in this race.
I agree with you 100%. And the thing that's interesting about Carl Blackburn it is in the same sense as like Charles, because Charles is from Lévis originally, but both of them have been up to very recently working in Charles' case, the Federation of Chambers of Commerce of Quebec. So that's a pan-Quebec thing based in Montreal. And then, of course, in the case of Carl, the Conseil du Patronat. So all of the bosses in Quebec. So, they do have, even though they're both from the regions, in one case in Saguenay and the other, like I just mentioned, in Lévis, they do have that Montreal knowledge. And I know that, I know in the case of Charles, he's been really hustling in Montreal he's got support of Jennifer Macaron, who's an excellent MNA.
It's going to be an interesting race, only about a week away. I will tell you, and having spoken to Carl Blackburn, and this wasn't in the interview, but he told me this, afterwards, and I'm not revealing any inside information here. Part of his plan where he elected and actually form a government is to blow up the Metropolitan and start all over again.
Oh, my goodness. That's not the worst idea I've ever heard.
That's the best idea. What are you talking about? Are you kidding me? That'd be the absolute best. It would be like a two-level highway, like, 2 decks.
Isn't that what Doug Ford wanted to do with the 401?
He wanted to build a tunnel or whatever underneath the 401. He just wants to fix this road up. I thought that was great, but it hasn't even come up, but I'm sure it will. Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Aaron. Feel better.
You too. Thank you.